Welcome to the Huddle. I'm Vahe Gregorian. On my left, Sam Mellinger, who cares enough about this to spit out his gum first, but still wearing a t-shirt. Blair Kerkhoff on my right. Ordinarily this week we'd probably immediately start talking about Chiefs camp opening tomorrow and full camp opening later this week, but Johnny Cueto came to the Royals yesterday, and from where I sit, it's a absolute game changer in a lot of ways for the Royals. I really haven't had a chance to talk to these guys about if they think that yet, but let's start. What does it do to the Royals, and is it as big a deal as I think it is, Sam?
I think it is. I think it changes their biggest weakness, which was who's going to start game one of a playoff series. It turns that into a strength. Instead of Yordano Ventura, who can be terrific, as we saw yesterday, as we saw in Game 6 of the World Series last year, but he can also be bad enough to be sent down to the minor leagues, sort of, before he gets called back up. But, it also pushes Jeremy Guthrie out of the playoff rotation, a potential playoff rotation. I think that's important. So they would have made the playoffs anyway, probably, right? They're the best team in the league. They got a 7.5 game lead in the division, but now this was a trade for October. This was a trade to win playoff series, and that's the biggest thing.
And Blair, that's got what I've been thinking about a little bit too. Is just the way they've positioned themselves leading up to now. Should they be a team that's thinking about what we can do in October, not just that we get there?
I think when they got to 15 over 500 and then 20 over 500, I think it became apparent that any move they were going to make wasn't for August and September. It was going to be for October, and not just October. I look at this as this is almost a World Series acquisition for the Royals. They got a guy from the National League who has been just dynamite for the Reds and against National League hitters and National League parks. What's his ERA in that bandbox he played in Cincinnati is just incredible. So I just think this was a terrific move for the Royals, and one historically they've never had to make.
Right.
They've never been good enough to make this kind of move. They've actually been on the other side of these moves, giving up the top line players for the prospects that really historically have never worked out for them.
Which takes us to sort of a new sort of question with the Royals too. They gave up plenty. I'm okay with what they gave up, even if Johnny Cueto pitches 10 times down the stretch and 8 times or 6 times, whatever it would be during the playoffs, and they don't have him after this. What is the cost here, though, in the long run, and how much do you think a team like the Royals has to think future is now versus developing for the real future?
Yeah, I think it's always a balance. The Royals more so than other teams have balanced in the short term and the long term, but I just don't think they gave up all that much. You have to give up something to get something, but I don't know that any of those 3 guys are going to be a successful long-term starter in the big leagues. I think Brandon Finnegan had some really nice moments last year, but I think if you look at his numbers, they're very underwhelming. He showed up to spring training out of shape. That didn't help him. I think John Lamb's having a very good year. He's also 25 years old and having his first real successful year.
And had Tommy John already.
Yeah, so I also think the Royals benefited. There's a lot more pitchers on the market than hitters. The price for hitters, if Cespedes gets moved, for instance, that price is going to be really high. But the price that they had to pay for Johnny Cueto, it wasn't that much to me. I'm more than okay with what they gave up. They didn't give up their best prospect or their best pitching prospect.
I'm with you. I've been persuaded that Finnegan's kind of a tweener for them, that his ups and downs this year, literally coming back and forth from Omaha, sort of reflect that they don't exactly know what they want to do with him, who they want him to be, and they're okay with that. Yeah, maybe Lamb is a guy that fit later. I'd never heard of Cody Reed till yesterday, I'm sorry to say. Probably it means I'm not very well informed, but I think it also means that wasn't a guy that we would have thought was a primary building block of their future. Still have some other pitchers, plenty of other pitchers to look at. So what am I leading you here to, Blair?
Well, I think Finnegan's the one that the Royals fans are the one who they grew attached to him. The great story last year, pitching in the College World Series and then the Major League World Series, first player to ever do that. Which means he didn't take a normal path that a pitcher would take, in development. He was a major league pitcher the year he was drafted. That never happens. in the World Series as the year was drafted. That never happens.
Never.
So I think we just don't know about him and what his future. I think it's too early for us to suggest that he might not make it as a major league pitcher. The way the Royals were using him back and forth as a reliever, starter, Omaha, Kansas City, there's just not much known about. I want to see where he is 2 or 3 years from now, but for right now, for 2015, I just thought the Royals. I agree with you guys. Royals didn't give up a lot, and in return, they got a #1 starter. That's phenomenal.
Is this the sort of thing for both you guys that you can live with whatever comes here? I mean, whatever Johnny Cueto does or Ashley doesn't do, however those guys that they gave up for him go on to succeed because sort of in principle it was the right move. I feel that way, but maybe we'll all feel different if it plays out differently than it looks like it might.
Well, Sam is really well versed in this because you covered baseball and the Royals a lot in the last 10 or 15 years, but look at the guys that they gave up in deals like this when the Royals were on the other side of this. A Johnny Damon, a Jermaine Dye, a Carlos Beltran. All those guys went on to win World Series. Maybe not the year they were traded, but they became impact players for the teams. They got, and in return, the Royals got a few players, the John Bucks, the Mark Tiens, but that's really it. I mean, when you add up those three in particular, those three acquisitions or those three trades that the Royals made, they didn't get a whole lot of return and gave up a ton. They gave up World Series champions. And I think that's where the Royals have high hopes that they have obtained a World Series championship player.
I also think that in the last few years, the price for these top of the line players to help a playoff push has come down a little bit because I think the value of those prospects has come up. You know what I mean? So 10 years ago, you would have had to give up a lot more in terms of capital, in terms of prospects than you do now, and I think that benefits the Royals. I mean, that's just context of how baseball is right now. But there's no guarantees, right? Like Johnny Cueto, there's some medical questions. He's had a start or two skipped this year with the elbow and stuff. But the Royals have a really good training staff. They've looked at the reports and they're comfortable with it. So just playing the odds that they have right now, you have to really love this trade. Even if John Lamb turns into a fine, #3 type of starter, and Brandon Finnegan, maybe a 7th, 8th inning guy, something like that, and Cody Reed, who knows. The fact that you can get a #1 guy that now Yordano Ventura can start Game 2 of a playoff series if he continues to pitch well. Edison Volquez maybe starts Game 2 or Game 3. You have Danny Duffy in there who's pitching really well. It makes them so much stronger. They're a stronger team than they were last year, for sure. I think Johnny Cueto, we saw what, the trajectory of James Shields' season. He kind of struggled in the playoffs. I think he had a 5.4 something ERA in the playoffs for the Royals last year. Johnny Cueto is better than James Shields in starting Game 1. So it sets them up so much better. It's a move that they absolutely had to make.
I think so too, and I'm sure that's about all the time we have, but it's amazing how different it looks from that little couple-hour window the other day where Ventura gets sent down and Vargas blows out his arm, and you're like, what are they possibly going to do here? And so it's a completely different landscape, I think, for the Royals. And